Half a day, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to PNC's News First. We're live from the Broadcast Center, Aconta. I'm Clint Rajal.
And I'm Jolene Chavez. Topping our newscast today, over the last few months, the Guam Memorial Hospital has received dozens of letters from vendors either threatening credit hold or placing them on credit hold. Some urgently needed medicine. PNC's Janela Carrera reports the hospital's debt is now at over $10 million.
Relief will be coming to GMH by next fiscal year when the sales tax goes into effect. But until then, the public hospital continues to struggle daily with funding shortages. PNC obtained via FOIA dozens of letters from vendors either threatening to place the hospital on credit hold or actually placing them on credit hold. In some instances, medical suppliers refused to ship urgently needed items until payment was received. For example, on January 5th, GMH ordered from Baxalta 2 cases of albumin, a medication that is used to treat various conditions resulting from blood loss or liver failure. About a month later, GMH followed up on its request, saying, quote, "Item is urgently needed for patient use, currently 0 on hand," end quote. Baxalta responded a day later, saying, quote, "I won't be able to ship this order until payment has been made on previous orders." Again, GMH sent another request to Baxalta on January 2nd, saying, quote, "Urgent. Need confirmed shipping information on these 2 purchase orders. Due to surge usage, we have gone to 0 stock on immune globulin, and it is urgently required," end quote. Baxalta agreed to ship the products, but noted that there would be a delay in getting the products to Guam. So GMH wrote back a couple weeks later, saying, quote, "Need confirmation these purchase orders will arrive Guam on February 12-18, as you have previously stated. Items are urgently required, and the delay in receiving the products are causing numerous problems," end quote. Baxalta generously agreed to send the critically needed immunotherapy medication, but gave GMH a stern warning, saying, quote, "Going forward, orders won't be processed until payment has been made on previous orders." One of the bigger accounts is local vendor MedFarm. On February 20th, MedFarm rejected an order because GMH's balance grew to $400,000. MedFarm's CFO wrote, quote, "I am so sorry, but $400,000? We have been asking, begging for payment over past 2 months. As soon as we get a decent payment, credit hold will be released," end quote. About a week later, GMH made good and paid down over $100,000, and credit hold was lifted, even if it still had a balance of more than $250,000. With MedFarm writing, it, quote, "supports GMH, but we must be paid for the supplies delivered to GMH so that we may pay our vendors," end quote. The hospital's trash bins at one point were filled to the brim with no processing from trash collectors because of an overdue balance. On December 18, the hospital's chief of environmental services warned management that its compactors and other waste bins were full, saying, quote, "Biotrash will accumulate to approximately 800 pounds per day. Please advise when I can have checks for both vendors," end quote. Some vendors don't bother responding to requests for quotations because of past due invoices. Gulf Coast Pharmaceuticals Plus, in an email dated February 7th, wrote, quote, "We have most of these items in stock and ready to ship as we have become the largest supplier in the U.S. for IV fluids. But I don't want to waste your guys' times with quotes because we can't fill the orders until the past due invoices are taken care of." Adding, quote, "Until those are done or I at least have confirmation that payment is on the way, it doesn't make much sense to quote you on these items as we may not have them by the time that AP gets everything cleared up," end quote. The account rep ends by saying, quote, "I'm always fighting for you guys, but my hands are tied on this one," end quote.
You can read more online at pacificnewscenter.com.
Governor Eddie Calvo says GUAM is not out of the fiscal crisis woods just yet, as payroll will still be difficult to make in the next couple of months. Because of this, he's opposed to anything that repeals or exempts taxes, and he's keeping his current cost-cutting measures intact. Governor Eddie Calvo says GovGuam is still struggling with its cash flow, which is why he is opposed to recent bills that have been introduced to repeal the sales tax or add exemptions to the sales tax unless those bills identify alternative funding sources. Senator Mike Nicholas has introduced a bill to repeal the recently signed Bill 248 that will raise the business privilege tax by 1% beginning on April 1st until September 30th and create a 2% sales tax beginning on October 1st. Senators Regine Biscoli and Fernando Esteves have introduced bills that exempt necessities from the sales tax. GovGuam was projecting a $67 million shortfall in revenues due to the Trump tax cuts. Bill 248 was passed and signed into law to provide roughly $30 million for this fiscal year. The governor is adamant that this fiscal crisis is a real crisis that needs to be addressed with some form of real additional funding.
If they are to introduce legislation that will take out funding that, as far as I'm concerned, equalizes what was taken from the government as a result of tax cuts, then they got to find substitutes. And it's something that it's important. This is not about campaigning. It's not about politics. I'm not running anymore.
The governor says this is about avoiding furloughs, payless paydays, and the closing or shutting down of GovGuam services. The governor says that even with the passage and signage of the tax bill, making payroll for the next few pay periods will still be difficult.
The cash flow, even now with the new tax revenues that will come as a result of the increase of the BPT, we don't see the actual revenues coming in until May 20th. So, for the next couple of months, it's going to be hairy.
This is why Governor Calvo says he is continuing his cost-containing measures and will be submitting his fiscal realignment plan to the legislature tomorrow. This plan is essentially $30 million in cuts without cutting more than $12 million for GDOE.
What we're sending over to the legislature ensures that education is not further hit, but then all of the other agencies will have to take, will have to sacrifice.
And as for furloughs,
the process still has to continue. And as you all know, the furlough process in GovGuam, there is a lot that needs to be done in order for us even to move forward. And it takes, again, there's a 90-day notice. So we need to continue to move and do our due diligence in terms of moving forward with the furlough process as well as other cost-cutting measures.
The governor says it is still too premature to roll back the cost-cutting measures his administration has already begun. Meanwhile, his administration is also continuing to pay out tax refunds.
I think last week we had maybe $2+ million. One of the things that was evident when I came in as governor, when I came in there was a $330 million accumulated deficit. And why everything else was still going on and the government was still operating was because they did not pay tax refunds. The majority of that accumulated deficit was tax refunds owed to the people of Guam.
The governor says this is why he is committed to continue making tax refund payments.
A night of partying, drinking, and an attempt to steal a phone allegedly led to a brawl in the parking lot of a gas station, resulting in the stabbing of one male individual. The victim was stabbed in the back during the fight as the men involved in the parking lot brawl were armed with a knife and a screwdriver. Court documents state that the police responded to the call and was provided with a description of the vehicle the suspects fled in, a red Honda Civic. Police were able to locate and pull over the vehicle by League Elementary School, where they then brought the victim and a witness to identify the suspects. According to court documents, the victim positively identified two of the suspects as Tom Lambert and Chris Lyon as the men he was fighting with. The victim told police that Lyon shoved and stabbed him in the back after he confronted him about attempting to steal a cell phone. A third man was identified as Carlton Rubin, who told police that he was picked up by Lyon and after drinking passed out in the back seat of the vehicle, only to wake up to seeing two unknown males, at least one of them with a knife, fighting with Lyon and Lambert. While he indicated that Lambert was holding a screwdriver and that Lyon was armed with a small knife, he denied seeing either defendants stab the victim. Lyon and Lambert were charged with assault, while Lyon was additionally charged with aggravated assault. Rubin was also arrested and charged with underage consumption of alcohol.
An 18-year-old female individual is spending time behind bars after police say she physically assaulted her elderly grandmother. Jaylene Guzman was allegedly drunk when she became angry with her 63-year-old grandmother after her grandmother raised questions about her drinking. According to court documents, the questioning prompted Guzman to begin, quote, throwing the table and everything in the house. But her drunken outburst didn't stop there. Court documents further allege that she punched her grandmother in the face about 3 times. Police noted that the elderly woman sustained swelling, redness, and abrasions to her left eye, forehead, and lips. Guzman was charged with family violence, aggravated assault with a special allegation of vulnerable victim enhancement, and underage drinking. She was booked and confined.
Did Jerome Joe Cruz sexually assault a minor? That is what the jury must now decide after weighing the evidence presented in the case. Before the jury deliberated this afternoon, legal counsels were provided one last opportunity to argue their points of their case. The prosecution contended that the burden of proof had been met in proving that Cruz sexually assaulted the 13-year-old boy. They pointed to 3 things: testimony from the victim recounting the incident, testimony from the victim's mother indicating a change of behavior from both the victim and Cruz the following day, and testimony from the GPD officer assigned to investigate the case. The prosecution also shared the plea agreement Cruz signed in 2010, in which he pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting a 16-year-old boy. The prosecution cautioned the jury to use the information as evidence of prior acts, but not to base the verdict on the conviction. Meanwhile, the defense argued that the prior conviction should not bear any weight on reaching a verdict. Defense counsel John Morrison stated, quote, "The prior conviction is the most difficult piece of evidence, which may tend to outrage the jury," end quote, adding that Cruz served his time for that crime and is square with the system. Morrison argued that this case is not about the prior conviction. Instead, it is, quote, about a rush to judgment and a failure by police to collect basic evidence, end quote. Morrison added that the government failed to provide the burden of proof to convict his client.
The Micronesian Resource Center is reaching out to the island's villages to offer its various services to immigrants from the freely associated states. The MRC is a nonprofit organization that is a part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization of Guam. The Micronesian Resource Center offers informational and educational services like their Welcome to Guam orientation for new FAS immigrants. They also offer assistance to immigrants who have lived on Guam for a while. They've created a Welcome to Guam handbook that they will be offering at the Guam International Airport Authority for new arrivals from the freely associated states. They have also been working closely with the Guam Department of Education, the Guam Memorial Hospital, and the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. Eileen Nemello is the project director of the Micronesian Resource Center's one-stop shop.
Our 3 main goals with the programs are education, workforce development, and health. So we will try to, we work closely with a lot of resources here on Guam to promote our program, so we could assist the resources, assist the government agencies or non-profit organizations to help the smooth transitioning with the Micronesian.
Nemello told the Mayor's Council of Guam that they would like to do more community outreach into the various villages to provide their services throughout the island.
The Department of Public Works broke ground on a Department of Defense-funded $44 million road widening project for Route 3, also commonly known as NCS Road. The existing 2-lane roadway will be widened to a 4-lane divided road that will stretch from 600 feet south of Route 28 to Chalan-Carreta. There will also be a signalized intersection added to the Route 28, Artero Drive and Chalan-Carreta. The Chalan-Carreta intersection is where the new main gate entrance will be to the future Navy Vinegayan cantonment area that will be built for the new Marine Corps base that is necessary as part of the relocation of Marines from Okinawa to Guam and the Guam military buildup.
It's great for me to be part of something that's so much bigger than self, and really what it does for the folks in Guam and what it does overall for the security of our great country. So.
The contract was awarded to Black Construction. Its expected completion date is January of 2020. Governor Eddie Calvo says over the next 5 years, Guam will see $5 billion in construction projects related to the Guam military buildup.
All right, that's it for News First. From all of us here at PNC, thanks for watching. Stay maulig.
And have a great night.